My name is Matt Ney. I'm the founder of Kakana. Kakana is an accessible and inclusive fitness platform. And we launched in October. And so we're really new, 4.5 months. And we stream live daily fitness classes, and we have an on-demand library that you can access at any time. Our goal was twofold, was to create high quality, high standard fitness classes, as well as put a community that wraps around the idea of fitness. And part of having a community is creating different events and collaborations that bring good information and stuff that individuals can use in their daily lives. And that's what this is. Our first roundtable on the most relevant topic we could find of the day, which is obviously strategies to combat COVID and specifically social isolation. In the future, we will probably be hitting a variety of topics. We've been talking to and have had discussions about having a nutrition roundtable, a sexual assault roundtable, a mind-body connection roundtable. So this will just be the first and hopefully the first of many. So with that, I'll jump into introducing our speakers tonight, our brilliant speakers. And first is Adrian Burnett. He is a Kakana instructor. He is also taking his master's at American University. He is the captain of the Philadelphia McGee 76ers, which is the wheelchair basketball team in Philadelphia, and also a member of the Maryland Thunder wheelchair lacrosse team. He was a Division I athlete at the University of Arizona as well. And quite the asset to the Kakana family for sure. Annie Tolkien is the founder and director of Accessible College, which provides college prep and transition support for students with physical disabilities and health conditions. She's an leading expert in these areas and is able to support families and students across the country. I have personally found her invaluable already in terms of her knowledge. So if anyone is needing of support in that capacity, she is the one to call. TJ Griffin is the coordinator for the Peer and Family Support Program at Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. It's a national peer-to-peer mentoring program for individuals living with paralysis and family members and caregivers. It is a monstrous program, and it is amazing to watch his mentors work. So if anybody either wants to be or in need of mentorship, he is the person to ring. And then finally, we have Lauren Presutti, and she is an award-winning multidisciplinary entrepreneur, disability advocate, psychotherapist, speaker, and educator. She holds 3 graduate degrees from Grand Valley State, Masters of Education, Education Specialist, and a Master of Social Work. So these are the dynamic group that will be speaking tonight on mainly trying to give everybody strategies and ways to combat loneliness, isolation, and during this pandemic. So let's get going. Lauren, I'm going to start with you on this one. It seems more relevant to what we're doing. So isolation obviously is a persistent issue inside communities of individuals with disabilities, right? So can you kind of talk about how COVID has stressed that even more, but also what we can do to support people emotionally during this final stretch of COVID?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've seen this whole year how isolating COVID-19 is for everyone in our country, for people globally. This is a global public health crisis, and no one is immune to that. But for individuals with disabilities in particular, I know firsthand as a wheelchair user, I was born with muscular dystrophy. I was using a power wheelchair by the time I was 5 years old, and just growing up through the K-12 system and then going to college. I mean, I had friends, sure, but there was this overwhelming sense of feeling misunderstood by the wider community. For the people that did take the time to get to know me and understand my needs, that was great. But I mean, just being thrown into a classroom or thrown into a school environment or anywhere in the community, there isn't very many opportunities. There aren't very many opportunities for individuals with disabilities to feel deeply understood, deeply connected, and like they're able to be heard. And that's why I love, the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation and these organizations that absolutely value that connection, and what you're doing, Matt, with Kakana, really building that community. Because for a lot of individuals with disabilities, whether you use a wheelchair or have some other type of mobility challenge or, visual impairment, hard of hearing, I mean, no matter what your disability is, you're going to experience that from society, where not everyone is going to understand your needs. You're probably going to have to explain yourself to a lot of people, explain what your needs are, and think about like asking for accommodations and just how overwhelming that is. And it's very isolating. It's very much a feeling of being alone in your struggles and in your disability experiences. So yeah, this COVID-19 pandemic has made that feeling of isolation really much more intense. It's intensified that isolation. A lot of individuals with disabilities may rely on community services or transportation in the community that is now being cut short. They may have caregivers. I have personal care assistants that help me with my daily living. And with this pandemic, I've been short staffed by extreme numbers, and just the gravity of that situation has been really hard for lots of people with paralysis, for neuromuscular diseases, for all types of things. We're scrambling. We're all scrambling, and we're struggling to feel heard. I mean, and then it comes down to the medical treatments and how much discrimination there is. If you're following the news, you're looking at all of these individuals with disabilities who are sometimes being turned away from medical centers and offices and hospitals in particular. And that's incredibly scary. That's terrifying. Not to mention, a lot of people with disabilities may have a disability because of a health condition. So they have possibly underlying health conditions that compromise their immune systems. So it doesn't matter whether we look at it from a medical standpoint, a social standpoint, a just practical standpoint of managing their life day to day. It's all impacting individuals with disabilities in very unique ways. As a therapist, I work with people of all backgrounds, identities, and abilities, but I do have many clients who have disabilities, and I hear, whether it's a lack of transportation now or lack of being able to access services that they need, or just being stuck indoors like so many of us are, but especially for individuals with disabilities, like I said, who already feel isolated, who already feel like they're limited from a full independent life, participating in the community as full active citizens who already feel limited in that way, and now being so isolated. I guess going off your second point, to counter some of this, I'm always instilling these ideas and values of self-care, connection, really explaining to people what you're going through, not bottling it up inside, having outlets to talk about this, whether with a counselor, your family members, friends, making sure that you're following a routine, basic needs. Are you eating every day? Are you getting enough sleep? Do you need to prioritize sleep better? Do you have something to do every day? Don't just fall into that trap of, watching Netflix for 10 hours every day. If you're unemployed right now, that's understandable, but maybe there are new hobbies that you want to pick up. Maybe there's new types of learning that you want to engage in. Maybe you want to join an online community like Kakana, where you can start doing some exercise in a different way that you maybe have never done before. Not everyone's going to come out of this pandemic with being a master chef, like, right? Like a lot of people are taking this time to like develop all these great skills or write a book or do some really important things. But I want everyone to know that if all you're doing right now is surviving, that's okay. We are in a global pandemic. I mean, we're going on a year now of being stuck in this. The biggest advice that I have for people is to find a way to verbalize what you're feeling, acknowledge your emotions, don't hide it, and notice your thinking patterns. Are you fixated on certain types of negative thinking? Are you thinking in all or nothing terms, like everything is ruined? Can you look at the gray areas? Can you find ways to not disqualify the positives that there are and to just get through one day at a time? And as service providers, whether it's Annie and her work or you or myself or TJ or Adrian, I think the biggest thing that we all can do is to honor and validate their experiences and really connect with individuals with disabilities to say, I get it. I know what you're going through. This is valid. It's hard. It's not easy. What you're going through is a challenge, and I hear you and I see you.
Yeah.
But here's what we can do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's perfect. I mean, it's certainly important to be able to hear somebody. Annie, you deal on a daily basis with a block of people who don't actively always express themselves, right? And having to pull it out of them, I think it's a good lesson for everybody, right? I am certainly one that you have to pull it out of me. I may as well be an 18-year-old again. But what's your advice, or what would be your tricks to help people emotionally during this time?
Yeah, so I work predominantly, though not exclusively, with students who are high school age or kind of in that transition to college period, or who are in college. And you're right, it is like kind of a tricky time for a lot of adolescents, that age frame. People aren't typically emotive. And if they are, maybe the only person with a physical disability in their school or in their area, or they feel like they're the only person with a health condition in their area, because that's another area of students that I support, is students with health conditions, and a lot of students with invisible disabilities in particular, whether it's a mental health condition or a chronic health condition, feel really, really alone. And they don't realize or recognize most of the time that there are other people who are also experiencing the same things, right? And so one of the things that I always kind of try and help students, young adults, see is that there are like communities online, where they can go and kind of connect with other people who have similar questions or concerns, or who are dealing with similar things. So much of this period where you're transitioning into college is kind of like about finding yourself and like finding your tribe, right? And like that's something we always talk about, like with young adults, kind of like coming into who they are. And mostly for high school students, most of the high school students that I work with, their parents have kind of managed things related to their health care and their well-being for them. And so it's complicated, it's fraught. There's a lot of stuff going on around that. And the students are starting to go into that phase around 17, 18, that transition to college, or the transition to, work or whatever, where they're trying to figure out, like, who am I? How do I advocate for myself? Like, what are my needs? How do I identify my needs? And sometimes they're not even thinking that far in advance, right? And so that's where it's really critical to figure out, who's your community, right? And luckily, there are communities probably like TJ will talk about with the Reeve Foundation, which also I have a program with the Reeve Foundation offering consultations for students with paralysis for free through the Reeve Foundation. I'll put a link in the chat box too, who are transitioning to college. So I work through the Reeve Foundation with that. But there's also some other groups, like there's a group that's called the Health Advocacy Summit, and it's a group of college-age students with chronic health conditions who have gotten together to share you know, their concerns and the things that they've experienced as students with invisible disabilities on college campuses. And that's really help inform other students who have chronic health conditions who are like coming up, right? So there are some communities online. The Mighty is one that comes to mind a lot. I've written for them, and they have like a sharing kind of posting situation where you can post questions and comments and things, and kind of connect with your people. And I think also things like, you know, like Kakana, Matt, like you're doing here, like creating this network where people can talk about, you know, their concerns and get that community. But it's really about like finding your tribe. And one kind of positive thing I feel like about this COVID-19 pandemic is that it's given people, or it's forced people to look online for their communities, right? And so that's kind of been like a kind of ray of light, at least from a lot of the students that I talk to see like what is out there and what can I experience and what can I find online. I know for a lot of students who have health conditions too, it's like very, it's been great for them because they feel like, oh, now everybody knows how I feel. We're all in the same boat. We all have to take school online. We're all doing this together as opposed to feeling excluded. So in some weird way, there's been maybe more accessibility or more inclusion with kind of like the online formats of things. But yeah, so I think that like finding your group and looking around online for like where your people are and connecting to those people is critical. So I hope that's helpful for folks.
Yeah, I think so. TJ, I'm gonna slightly different angle because you guys deal with thousands of people, right? And are having to constantly help navigate what's been happening for over the past year, right? So yeah, for me, I kind of want you to touch strategies, and it could be similar to what Annie and Lauren were talking about, but in a slightly different way. Just what do you give as advice or strategies to maintain a positive mindset, right? It's different, but it's
no, it is. It's just different. I think I got you. Just to let you know, guys, I'm TJ. I'm the mentor coordinator for the Reed Foundation. I'm a quadriplegic. I broke my neck playing high school football 30 years ago, but I live in Texas. So if you're going to go out, you want to go out and play high school football, you know, take it out. It was a good hit too. I even have it on videotape. But, you know, one of the things I talk about, like when people come to us, everyone thinks it's always new injuries that are wanting a peer mentor, someone that they can talk to, and especially people with disability, but it's not. It's people that I've been hurt 30 years. I still bounce off stuff with my old roommate in rehab. We both got hurt at the same time. We lived together in the 6 months back then. We still bounce stuff off each other of just frustration and vent, having that someone to vent to that actually understands what's coming, whether it's oh God, I have, bowel program tomorrow. I'm sorry to say that. I'm just, that's what it is, stuff like that. Having that, but not your average person can understand, is something that's really valuable about then, having, when you talk about finding your group. But to what you were talking about, Matt, one of the things that I've talked to people about, and we've seen a lot more with people having a hard time with this pandemic that have been injured for a while, and now they are stuck at home and they, they're not able to go out as much. And one of the things I kind of talked to him about is the importance of trying to set goals in a way. And everyone always thinks, and I'm a big exercise fan. I got into it, and that's why I'm trying to get back into it, because I'm big on exercising and goals of like whether we're trying to lose weight, whether we're trying to gain strength. But one of the things I try to tell people sometimes when you first get hurt, you're like, oh, I want to try to be able to maybe do this for myself. You learn your independence again when you start getting injured, of what you can and can't do, and you set goals. One of the things I think people forget about is setting goals emotionally for themselves. And to actually think about it that way is like almost like a goal setting. For me, when I first got hurt, I had to set it when I got back home from rehab and I was going back to school. I was going to I set a goal of anytime someone asked me to go somewhere, I'm going to say yes, no matter what, back then, just to make sure I get out in the community. I'm going to look everybody in the eye. I'm going to be the same person. I'm going to be, even if I have to fake it till you make it confidence, I wanted to do that and push myself. But in this pandemic, it's I want you to set a goal of you are going to not just watch TV by yourself, or you are going to make a point of, I'm going to reach out to a family member or friends I haven't talked to in, a couple months or 2 months. And I'm going to talk to them about five people I haven't talked to in a while. I'm going to reach out to that. Or I am going to do something for myself that betters myself, whether that be, it doesn't have to be, reading something that you wouldn't actually read, exploring something you wouldn't read, learning something a little bit new. I know everyone says learn a new language or something like that. That's hard. But what you could do is maybe learn something about yourself by talking, figuring out maybe some of the personality things, or start using this time as a planning session of, okay, the pandemic's, the one thing that this pandemic has, I think, done in a positive way for people with disabilities is let companies know that, oh my God, employees can be very productive at home and they can do stuff on Zoom. So why are we not hiring some of these people with disabilities that, maybe they can't come to the office all the time, but they can make an amazing impact and bring a whole new perspective to the workplace of other people from the way we look at things, the way we have to do, I'll be honest, I worked at IBM before this, and it used to put things in perspective, their bad day is not so bad compared to maybe our day of a long morning of what, they're complaining about a long commute. And I'm like, well, try getting up an hour and a half early to have someone get you ready before you get up or go in, but these companies, so now use this time as, okay, maybe I am going to look back and maybe I try to finish up school or do something that you didn't think of. So I was big on trying to tell people to learn to set emotional goals for themselves. And it's the same way as doing physical goals too. I don't want you to say, okay, I'm going to graduate college at this time. That's my goal. That can be a goal, but what you need to do is really plan out. Let's set some emotional short-term goals. Okay. So does this mean, all right, by next week, if you are, let's say you want to look at school or going back to school, it's okay. Let's look at what's the best online courses for me. What's the best online school for me? What would be the best program? How much physically can I do in a day or whatever in time frame? So you just start doing that. And then you start going, okay, I'm going to reach out to the school. Those are the goals you do. Or maybe it's just emotional. You're trying to work on realizing that you haven't really explored everything that's available to you in a chair. So maybe you use this time to reach out to more organizations such as, not to self-promote, the Peer and Family Support Program with the Reeve Foundation. And they talk to us, and you talk to someone else because maybe you live in an area that you don't know a lot of people that are C5, C6 quadriplegics. So you talk to someone that's been hurt for 30 years that has experienced travel or working or dating or marriage or whatever it might be. And you start realizing there's things out there that you didn't think you could do, but you can because I'm reaching out to other people. I'm making those contributions, but you have to push yourself in a way. So, I mean, I did it when I was an athlete before I got hurt. I put my goals on the mirror and I looked at them every day. I have no problem with doing that with emotional goals of too. Where am I at emotionally? Am I making myself happy? And one of the things I know I do is when I'm having those bad days is utilizing tools, find out what does help me get in a better mood, does help me relieve stress, whether that's learning deep breathing. Lauren did a couple things about taking care of ourselves, taking some time to take deep breaths, turn off the TV, whatever it might be. Me, it's exercise, or something like that. Busting out a quick hit exercise where it's 7 minutes of kill myself and then I'm done or something like that. Those things can matter, but you list them out. It's really trying to prioritize your life right now. And so I'm big on goals about it, but don't always think goals have to be physical. I think they're great, especially for exercise. Goals can be, if not sometimes more important than emotional.
Yeah, for sure. Adrian, I want you to touch on the mindset just because you've been an athlete, you've been in big sporting event games, you've been on Kakana from the beginning. You understand where the mindset takes you, but I also want then you to venture into what do you recommend, because you're an avid, you're also working out a lot, be it on Kakana or off on your own. What do you do to keep care of yourself physically as well, which really does link to the mindset? Because if your mindset is not in the space to go and be active or do something, then you're not going to do anything. You're just going to be sitting and watching Netflix, like Lauren said. So I kind of wanted you to touch on the, strategically what you do and what you would suggest.
Yeah, all the advice that was previously given, it all, I think it all ties it together. One thing I would say, building off of what TJ said, about having emotional goals, I can tell you right now, like I don't know how, so I have spina bifida. I don't know how many, individuals there are with spina bifida, but I do know that, um, I'd say at least half of them don't realize their potential, as far as, what I mean, occupational, professional. As someone mentioned dating, I've definitely, I'm super open, when it comes to anything, but all it is confidence, man. Like, I gotta be honest, I think that even people that are using like the Kakana to work out at home, I have so many friends that like they, depleted because it's up here. You know what I mean? So if you can find a goal as simple as wanting to look in the mirror and saying, you know what, damn, this shirt fits me well. You know what I mean? Or I want these jeans to fit, or what I mean, I'm gonna get on, I want to go on a date, I want to look good, or I want to attract a type of person or anything. So having like a really specific goal, not saying you want to lose like 50 pounds. I've always been keen on like, okay, like if I'm playing lacrosse, I want 2 goals scored on me all year. That's it. I know whatever I need to do, if I need to get stronger, if I need to, cut out something in my life, and then really just focusing on this goal, that's what I got to do. I think as far as right now, you're really seeing a lot of individuals that perhaps, I'm talking about athletes, that dedicated their lives to adaptive athletics, just go through depression. It is what it is. You can't go out, and go on a push. You know what I mean? You can't go out and go to the pool. You know what I mean? Like not everyone can drive. So one thing I will say is like having a community, having not only like, this is awesome, right? Like this is like, we're smiling and we're happy, but when I work out, I try to work out with people that are going to really push me, you know what I mean? So that I can know I'll be accountable that next weekend. We talked about graduate school. I think Lauren said she had like 50 degrees.
No.
You know what I mean? Like amazing. But like, I'm sure, throughout your studies, there were times where you're like, you know what? I need to remember why I'm doing this. You know what I mean? So
absolutely,
you don't have to work out every day. Like for instance, I used to work out 2, maybe 3 times a day, but I realized that what I can sustain is every other day. Why you're doing it. You want to make sure you maintain this so that when we get out of this pandemic, your body isn't, beat up.
Adrian, I have a question. I mean, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just have a question. Sure. I have a feeling, can you see too when someone comes into those classes, maybe it's their first time or they're doing something and you can see they're apprehensive, but by the end, do you see the smile on their face? Because I feel like exercise can do that, or not even that, just being part of a community of somebody, you all of a sudden, okay, even though you might not be doing it as well as you, or obviously because you're teaching or whatever, but do you find that? Because I feel like that would be something that probably happens.
That's a really good question. I'm not even gonna, and Matt, I don't know if I'm allowed to say like how long I've been doing this or not doing it. I really I'm gonna be honest. I bought a hand cycle like early in the summer. I didn't know Matt. I didn't know, to be honest, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know Mizan, Chris. I didn't know anyone on this call. I didn't know James. What I did know, I just know I wanted to like work out. Didn't even really hand cycle. But I figured out like, all right, cool. Like I'm not gonna be able to go outside. So we just took a class. And I think everyone was new. So I figured out that like, if I'm just really positive, I really can't tell, when a person's new, but I can tell if you feed off of other people's energy. You know what I mean? I think that's like the biggest thing, I guess. Didn't really answer your question, but
no, I mean, I can see that. that's what I'm saying. The energy of it, but having that, it can be infectious is what I'm saying.
Definitely.
And being around other people. And when you maybe coming to these classes, come not just to talk, but also just join these classes, and you see someone with infectious energy and the rest of it, that makes a difference. It's hard to be, I tell people, I was like, if you're worried about being negative, you're worried about being upset and depressed all the time, be around people that are positive, be around it, because positivity breeds positivity. And unfortunately, negativity brings negativity too. So if you're having those thoughts and you're by yourself, that's when, unfortunately, we can't do it in person, but you reach out to somebody, you do something. So maybe join a class, do something, get something where you're out there and you're seeing more positive things in the world will make you feel better about it too.
Yeah, I think and also realizing that, like, even joining this call right now, you know what I'm saying? Like, or working out, like something as simple as that. And then, you know, I know people get made fun of for posting on Instagram or Facebook, you know, when they work out, but I'm telling you right now, like, if you do that, that inspires other people to, you know what I mean, to work out, you know, to get out of bed, to do all that stuff. So just, I don't know, like, realize that you're a leader, you know, like that's really what I would say, is just realize that you're a leader. You know, whether you're an instructor, whether you're, you know, a leader in your profession, anything you do, you know, it's definitely it's inspirational to everybody. As far as
not only that, you also leader in your own life. I think Lauren or Annie said it. You know, one of the things I preach to our mentors when we're training them, and we try to talk to the peers too, is teach your peers to take, you know, be their own advocate, be their own. They know what they're doing. You have a voice. You can make your own, you know, doctor's appointments. You can make your own school appointments. You can make your own medication. You know tell somebody what you need. Even if your fingers don't work, take control of what you can control. The more you can control, the more you're going to feel like you're in control of this world and what you can handle. And that's even especially in this world, which we feel like everything's so lost as called right now in this pandemic. The more you can do that you haven't done before to control things and learn there's more you can do for yourself, the more you're going to feel like you're in control, and it helps the situation.
For sure. And I think also, Adrian, you touched on something. Realistic goals and realistic actions matter a lot. You know, you're right. When you get back to non-COVID, and I kind of want to touch on this later, but working out 3 times a week, or doing a chat 3 times a day, or, you know, it's not really realistic once you get back into the daily swing of a non-pandemic. But doing something and scheduling it every day, every other day, you know, it can, you know, you can work out every day if you have a schedule. And having it be realistic, I think, keeps everything in proportion and doesn't overwhelm you as well. That's the biggest thing that I see. Lauren, I want to, that was kind of on the self, right? The individual, and kind of want to turn to the community a little bit. What networks do you see as being a positive place for individuals, to be honest, with and without disabilities, to either join or to look for, and where to look for them, right? So look, Kakana is a community as much as it is fitness, but we're just fitness, right? There are people who don't want to work out. So where else can you look, and what else is there?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many organizations that we don't even think about unless you start researching them. So it's really just about going online and looking up what's available in your community. I know in the town that I live in that we have a recreation department, and very, very, very few people know that there's adaptive equipment available there. And I think people just don't like pick up the phone and call and ask, hey, do you have adaptive equipment? I want to access the beach. Do you have an adaptive wheelchair? Do you have some things that I can access? And most of the time, even if they say no, they might say, but I know that we can get one, or I know that the next town over has one. We can make some arrangement. Communities are really integral to people's mental health. We need to be able to access the community. And so as we look into that post-pandemic world, you know, don't be afraid to call in advance to ask if a place is accessible, whether it's your local YMCA and asking about what equipment might be available. Do they have a hand cycle that they can set up for you in the gym so that you can be with everyone else and not feeling isolated like you have to do it at home or in the, you know, side area all by yourself? Think about your local library. Are there like reading groups, book clubs? Think about like the stores in your community. I know there's a lot of places where if you're really into arts and crafts, there's available places where you can do like woodworking and arts and crafts, or all of those painting sessions that are like drink wine and paint together. You know, there's so many places in the community that you may not think about on the top of your head. You know, you might think just, oh, I guess school, home, work, that's it. but there's really so much more out there as a community. And I think for people with disabilities, sometimes we shy away from it, not knowing if we'll fit in, not knowing if they will understand our needs, not knowing if they'll have tables that are accessible for our wheelchairs, not knowing if the local community concert will have accessible seating, not knowing all of those things. But I always encourage people to reach out and just make the phone call. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? They'll say no, that they don't have accessible seating. Okay, so you know that that's the case and you go look elsewhere. But it's about pushing yourself to be accessible to the community that you live in, whether it's online or in the physical community, like you mentioned. I think, like Annie said, finding your tribe is so important.
Yeah, it is. I think finding a network that is that can give you information or give you support as much as they take it is really important. Annie, I was reading an article the other day on loneliness, and it struck me that it mentioned 18 to 24-year-olds, and while I want you to touch obviously on the 18 to 24, I want you to kind of relate it to everybody, because look, I don't think societal isolation and loneliness is a singular age bracket problem, obviously. And it really, it talked about prejudice against people who don't fit the standard box, right? The standard norm. And so can you touch on how to combat either social prejudice or prejudice in general in terms of dealing with loneliness and isolation for everybody, really using students as an example, I guess?
Yeah, I think people feel isolated when they don't see people like themselves being like reflected in, their school or mainstream media or whatever, online or wherever they're going for their sources of information. So it kind of circles back to that whole thing of like finding your people, right? And there's so many strong, like whether it's people with disabilities or people without disabilities, but really like the disability community has been really active in terms of garnering more support for having, diverse bodies and diverse peoples represented in the media and in movies and in film and on screen and all of these things. And there's so many great advocates and activists who I know I follow on Twitter, and that's a place where I think too there's a whole like hashtag kind of strand around disability Twitter and people finding their tribe that way. I think like in terms of like young adults, it gets really tricky because that's like it's a tender time psychologically for most people. That 18 to 24-year-old time frame can be like kind of fraught because you are trying to figure out who am I and what do I want and how does this jive with like maybe my family, and maybe it's different than what my family would like to see me as. And so that can get kind of complicated, but it's that whole notion of like, there are people out there, your community is around, and you just need to seek them out. And one of the things, Matt, that I kind of wanted to hook back to was that, one of the themes, the emergent themes that has kind of come out as everybody's talking is like creating accountability for yourself. Every single one of you is like talking about ways to, to make sure that you're setting goals and doing things. But it's really, really important that people find ways to hold themselves accountable and kind of knowing how you tick, as it were. Like, are you motivated intrinsically, or do you need extrinsic motivation? Do you need someone to like check in with you and be like, hey, did you do that thing you said you were going to do? Or, like there are a lot of people who kind of need those touch points. And so, connecting with your family and your friends to share your goals or to share the things that you'd like to work on can be really helpful. And it's so obvious to me too that this whole panel, all of us are kind of coming from a coaching mindset. So in addition to like, you know, doing the work that I do with students, I'm also a group fitness instructor too. So there's that. But you know, it's really just that creating that accountability and finding how to create that accountability, even if you are alone. Like for me, it's like setting timers on my phone or setting reminders for myself to do that thing, because a lot of us, you know, we get so caught up in our day and we forget like, oh, I wanted to go on that walk, or I wanted to, you know, do that 3 minutes of meditation or whatever the thing is. And so sometimes having those systems in place is like the first step, creating that system and then achieving that goal. And not making your goals so huge is another key thing. Like just tiny. We don't need to eat the whole elephant is what I often say. Like we just need to take little bites, right? to get towards what we want it to be. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, no, it is. I will jump in. Anyone who has a question, just throw it in the chat and we'll save about 10 minutes at the end to go over questions that anybody has specifically for these four.
Can I add something to Annie's?
Yeah, go for it.
Remark. I just think that what you said about social media and finding people that you can look up to is so important to combat feelings of loneliness. Find yourself stories, books, videos of your role models, whether you have any type of disability or are a minority in any other way. You can find your role models. You can find the people that you look up to and be like, wow, why am I not doing more things like that person? How can I ask myself to step up and be more accountable in the ways that I'm seeing other people do these things? Like whether your role model is Judy Heumann or any other of the role models that are out there that are really amazing, empowered activists. I think self-reflecting by looking at your role models is a really good way to engage.
Yeah, that's a good, I like that. TJ and then Adrian, I kind of want you guys to touch on personal relationships in terms of, and I am always guilty of this. You know, a lot of people think that relationships are what they are, right? And they manifest themselves based on just luck or just circumstance. And the pandemic has shown us that that's not the case, right? I mean, you are in your own bubble now. I have been terrible at reaching out. I always, to probably the detriment, I'm always like out of sight, out of mind. But everyone's out of sight right now. So it's how have you at the Reed Foundation, and Adrian, you have been brilliant at this from what I've seen in terms of reaching out. What are your guys' advice to connecting with people and reaching out?
I'm bad. Like I am a social person, like I remember when the pandemic hit, a couple of my friends were like, oh, you're in trouble. Like you can't, I'm a hugger, like, check on the huggers because we're not doing well, honestly. But one of the things I kind of did was I kind of was like, okay, at first I was doing the Zoom thing. I was going crazy. I was like, I feel like I'm back at work doing Zoom with my family and everything like that. So I started, this sounds weird, following like some of the stuff on social media, like Facebook on more family members. I looked and then I was like, oh good. They post, if they post something interesting, I'm like, I'm not going to just reply back. I want to call them and say, hey, what's going on? I saw that you said this. This is hilarious. Well, I didn't know you got a dog, or I didn't, my cousin, I got a dog, or you're looking at this, or you're doing something. So instead of just liking it and making a comment on the Facebook, I actually was like, I need to call my good friend that I haven't seen in a while and do this. And that's what I did and made myself verbalize it. Cause I'm the same way, Matt, in a way, like I'm one of those, I want to see you and hang out and stuff. But if I'm not going to always call, pick up the phone or, do that. So I had to force myself to start doing that more because we couldn't just see each other, and then the other thing is I wanted to kind of figure out ways of reconnecting in a way with people I haven't talked with in a while. And some of that was sending text to friends and stuff that I haven't talked to in a while. And, starting off that way and then having a phone call and talking to them. So I used this time in a way, but it started with, I was not a huge social media fan, but now I was stuck inside for so long. I did more of Facebook, but I stayed away from any political stuff and everything like that. Cause I was like, that'll take you down a rabbit hole we don't want to get into. So it's just more of what is my friends and family doing that I was really, have been connecting. And I made a point of, instead of just typing a cool comment and liking it, I would, really try to, when it was something interesting, I really would try to call them and talk about it. And then obviously you say that first comment about that, and then it just rolls into another half-hour conversation.
Yeah.
And it almost always is like, man, I've been meaning to call you. I'm so glad you talked. I haven't wanted to see how you were doing. And it almost always, and so both of you are doing the same thing, but a lot of it is scheduling it and doing it. And then the one thing, it's not really about this, but we got to learn also, guys, to give ourselves a break. This is not easy, especially disability alone. It's not easy. It isn't. But I tell you right now, you got to learn to have a sense of humor in a way. And it's hard, but if you start thinking about with disability, there's just too much funny crap happens to us as it is. So, and I always tell people, if you can learn to laugh at a situation, then you can always handle a situation. So even in this pandemic, try to find humor, but most importantly, cut yourself some slack. If you feel like you haven't been doing a good job of reaching out to family, or you haven't been doing a good job of maybe exercising like you're supposed to, okay, that's okay. Just realize, you can't beat yourself up. That's not going to do you any good. You got two choices when stuff happens. You dwell on it, or you say, this sucks, but I'm going to make the best of it. I can do better than that now.
Yeah. Adrian, going on top of what TJ was saying, you're pretty good at it, for at least in my opinion. What are your tips? How do you kind of figure out ways to do it?
Yeah. I feel like it should be a part of the lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? Like I think right before this, I was talking to, I always have a group of friends, that's all right, your work friends, right? Then you have your immediate family, extended family, then I have my sports, and then my workout, but you know what I mean? So it's all spread out, but I found that we can't really see or be with anyone, you know what I mean? So use Instagram, just to reach out, man. It's the same thing as having a community. If I go and type in, if I go on Instagram and type in adaptive athlete, I'm gonna go see the top post, and I'm gonna like that person's stuff and be like, oh, this is dope. This is awesome. Do you have any what I kid you not, all you have to do is literally reach out to, it could be anybody, especially with someone that's has a similar interest. But back to that example, I've met so many people that otherwise I wouldn't have. We have, kind of like TJ was saying, you kind of have to slow down, but when you slow down, that doesn't mean just stop. Slow down and really realize the opportunity you do have. There's so many different avenues of communication now that it's there's no excuse to get in contact. There's email, Zoom, Skype, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. I'm probably missing a couple, but there's other stuff that you can use to go ahead and reach out. And I'm picking on Mizan because we both have spina bifida, but we were a part of two different groups, but they were sister groups. And she runs a spina bifida association meeting every Sunday. So I popped in, and then when I popped in, one of my lifelong friends was guest speaking. It was just crazy. Stuff like that. I'm telling you, it's a small world, all you have to do is reach out. Even to the people on this call, literally after this, you could say, hey, do you have social media? And see who they interact with, and just kind of branch out. And it's important to remember we're all in this together. So basically we're all trying to talk to each other. So keep that in mind. You don't have to be a super popular athlete. You don't have to be a model, or any of that stuff. I think that's one of the only things about Instagram that I don't really love. It's within every community, but just remember, it goes back to being a leader, and just reaching out to people, because more times than not, everyone appreciates it. Just
yeah. No, I think I think it's baby steps. You can't, I mean, a phone call seems daunting, then start with like TJ said, start with a text. If a text is daunting, start with a like. I mean, it just easier, tip your toe into the pool and build your way up to, okay, let's have a conversation. I mean, I've had conversations with people who have reached out to me because I'm terrible the other way around, but that I haven't had talked to in years, which it's been enlightening and fun and to catch up. And sometimes you don't do that. There was a question, and I'll open it up to anybody. So any of you guys, any recommendations specifically for neurodivergent folks when it comes to combating loneliness and decision fatigue? Anybody want to take a crack? Lauren?
Sure. I think a lot of what we said, find your tribe, find your community, but also notice your energy day by day. Notice how you're feeling. Really be mindful about symptoms of anxiety or depression that are coming up, things that are surfacing for you inside. Decision fatigue is something that many neurodiverse individuals really struggle with. That constant everyday routine is really important to them. And then when things change in a routine, especially like a global pandemic, many individuals that are, on the autism spectrum or who have other types of learning disabilities or other types of cognitive differences, it's exhausting. It's exhausting to have to develop your skills to cope with all of those things when your mindset is operating differently than what is, quote, like the norm. Neurodiversity is really important. We see it on the rise now, probably more than ever, where publicities are, there's just a lot in like public view right now. I think there's been a lot published. We see more television shows highlighting it. And the more that we can, educate people on neurodiversity, I think the better it is to combat feelings of that exhaustion and loneliness. Speaking up about what your needs are, having conversations about your experiences, not being afraid to talk about the fact that you're experiencing so much decision fatigue or that you're struggling in some way. It's really just all the same things, at least from my perspective. Finding your tribe, learning how to take care of yourself, practicing self-care. And I loved what TJ said earlier about being gentle with yourself, really practicing self-compassion. I talk about self-compassion a lot, and self-advocacy, which I know Annie knows a lot about too. But learning to say, okay, this is what I need right now, looking at yourself and noticing that you're the expert on your life. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks or what professionals think. An individual is always the best expert on their own life. So for individuals that have non-neurotypical experiences and identities, I think it's really just a continuation of self-care, self-advocacy, doing what you feel right, even if it's not the norm, going against maybe expectations or traditional ways of doing things, learning to adapt just like anyone else with a disability would, but just continuing to hold yourself accountable and maybe saying no to something if you feel exhausted that day, learning how to say no, learning how to ask for accommodations, knowing that you don't have to please everyone, you don't have to answer every phone call if you're exhausted, but finding a balance between what you can do to build a network and then also honoring your exhaustion and honoring your differences and knowing that you need to give yourself some time off or have a break that night, and that's okay too.
That, and I would say don't be afraid to ask for help. This is not easy.
Of course.
This is extremely tough time, and so it's okay. It doesn't have to, don't make it look like it has to be like, I feel like I have a great attitude and I still will talk to a counselor once in a while, stuff like that. I was like, listen, I go to the doctor. I go to the doctor for a physical every year. I think emotional checkup is even more in health.
Absolutely.
So know that it's okay to ask for help, and it helps there. And if you have to reach out to friends or somebody, but don't push that. Don't feel like you need help and don't get it. If you feel like you need help, it's okay. And it's a good thing. And the fact that you realize it, that you need help and it's okay to ask for it is the best positive sign you could have about yourself.
We all need people to talk to. Sorry, Annie, go ahead.
No, I was just a quick thing just about neurodivergent folks and folks on the autism spectrum and loneliness. We talked about some of like the mainstream kind of ways that people can connect, like Twitter and Instagram and stuff. But there's this whole other kind of thing going on where people are doing artificial intelligence and Second Life and gaming. Like my own nerdy husband plays Settlers of Catan with his friends in a group gaming situation a lot, but like so just kind of thinking outside the box, like if you're a big Dungeons and Dragons person, you can do that online with people and like find other ways to connect with people. And so yeah, the Second Life and the AI piece is something that I think doesn't get a lot of conversation, but that's another way for people to kind of get outside of themselves and can engage with community in a different way.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Yeah, I think, just don't be afraid to ask for help, like TJ said, and don't be afraid to explore these other avenues. Maybe you're not going to socialize or put yourself out there in the traditional sense, but maybe you're going to join some gaming groups and be really into that. And that can be an incredible way to practice self-care, to blow off some steam, to manage your mental health. I mean, it's all relevant.
Yeah. It is. And I think understanding what makes you comfortable, what makes you uncomfortable.
Really knowing yourself as a person.
Yeah. And even if you don't, right, start small. And if there's something that all of a sudden clicks, you can go further into it. And if it doesn't, you find something else. And really, for me, kind of when we were discussing the idea of isolation and loneliness and strategies, it's all, how do we practically fit it into our specific life? Because what's going to be good for me is not going to be what's good for Annie or TJ or Lauren or Adrian, and vice versa. And so it's trial and error, a lot of it. And look, we've probably got 6 to 8 months left of COVID until we're fully vaccinated and or herd immunity's built up and what have you. So there's a lot more time that we have to try to find outlets and whatever that is, whether it's cooking or fitness or Dungeons and Dragons. I think find your group, find your network, reach out to individuals in that network if you don't want to jump in off the bat. And I think a lot of people are a lot more welcoming to touch points and just asking for questions and help than they were in the past. Especially, I think, I forget who's touching on it, but it's the communities of individuals with disabilities have been fighting this for entirety of their lives. And all of a sudden now, because of COVID, that's become the norm in society. And it's really helping to show that, hey, this is out there and this needs to be solved. So in a way, I hope that it does open up more avenues to talk and to kind of converse. So it is 7:31. We are past the hour. I want to thank Lauren, Annie, Adrian, and TJ. You guys were amazing. We will post this on if you want to kind of run back through it and get some notes out of it or what have you. And if you have any questions in the post, I'll put their socials. And if they give me the okay, I'll give some contact information.
You can give my contact information. Anyone reach out to me.
Absolutely.
Anything. One thing I was going to say, guys, if you can, get out of your house, get out of your room if you can. do not sit in the same room. You know, don't wear the same clothes each day, even I'm telling you, sometimes, you know, routine's great too, but you got to break it up. And if you can, you know, get out for, whether just outside for just, you know, breathe some fresh air or whatever, just for a second, do something a little different each day. It does help with this. So,
yeah, it's a good point.
And Chris, hit me up after, man. I did see your message there.
I also will send it to Lauren.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And have a good night.